We have a guest that I had no idea is camera shy. We were on three, two, one, and he was disconnected from Bali. So we are now fully live with Baron of Wandering Earl from Bali. Welcome.
All right. Thank you so much. Thanks, man.
So there's so many travel bloggers, and you've written about how people talk to you about how they stopped reading travel blogs years ago. Well, there's a post that goes back a decade of yours that cemented my idea of you in my head and has been
All right.
memorable to me this day. And it's about do you shave your underarms too?
There you go. All right. That's a good one. Yeah, that's funny.
And in that, I mean, you could have, in a cynical sense, you could have sold me anything after that, because I figured any guy who would write a post like that with that level of honesty and authenticity has got to be someone I would like. So this is
That's funny.
the first time I get to extensively talk with you, and I'm curious about that authenticity you have with readers and sharing yourself in those unguarded moments.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. No, it's great to be here, man. And honestly, I guess when I started blogging, I started to see early on that it just didn't make sense. I'd been traveling already for about 10 years, nonstop before I started blogging. And suddenly I saw all these bloggers starting who had just started traveling. And I just saw a lot that I was like, I don't know if that's really how it goes. That's not my experience. My experience isn't quite how they're portraying it in the 10 years previous that I had of travel. So I really just thought, the only way to do this right is to just tell it like it is. And I'm going to just make sure that my blog is honest and authentic, because I think people need to hear everything, not just, that those good shiny stories. And yeah, and I think that's the most important thing. I see someone says no sound
Yeah,
there.
I'm just checking. Let me see here. Anybody else having this issue? It looks good on my end. If others watching could comment, are you getting the sound or not? Everything looks good here, so just give it one moment. This is the
Yeah.
loud and clear. Okay, so it is just an individual device, Danielita. So she usually joins us with a large glass of red wine in hand. So maybe
All right.
maybe she bumped a button, but we are
All right,
live. One of my friends up in Vancouver. So well, yeah, we're good. We
Right.
will roll on. And talking about those authentic moments, I didn't realize how timely it is. That I was going to ask you about the experience of dengue fever as a bit of a proxy for our times, and it turns out you're living in proximity to it.
Very much so. I had it well, I guess it was like maybe 6 years ago when I was here in Bali before. And yeah, I just happened to be here now. And my girlfriend just got it a week ago. So actually, the nurse is on her way in about an hour to take some more blood samples. But yeah, that's an interesting experience. She's had it a little bit more mild than what I had. But it does make you think when you see someone has it. And when I had it, it was horrible. I mean, just stuck. I mean, that was one of the few times I was in tears for days. I couldn't move. I couldn't get out of bed. I had to crawl to the bathroom. I couldn't eat really. Was super weak with the blood cell count going down, and it was pretty rough. So now that she has it, I am even more careful. It's one of those things, right? You become here, you be careful with mosquitoes, and then all of a sudden you get a little bit lazy. But then now that she has it, I'm very careful again, as I definitely don't want it again. And she's luckily doing pretty well at the moment.
Oh, well, that's great to hear, and I've felt like of people in my orbit, the ones who most want things to magically be better right now in a global health sense are travelers, but also there's some of the most realistic people I've seen, where people who aren't traveling are throwing caution to the wind or thinking they're
Yeah,
in
for
the
sure.
so I don't even know how to communicate to people who don't value travel that we should all do something so travel can come back.
Yeah, right. Well, that's a tough one. Yeah, I definitely agree with that wholeheartedly. But it's also a tricky one now too, because I think for a lot of people, it's tough to push travel these days when obviously a lot of people's lives have changed. So it's a tough one. I even tried to balance that with my newsletter that I send out each week. It's pretty tricky. I want to try and push that travel and get people back out there, but obviously to do it in a way that everybody feels like it's the right thing to do.
And CJ is asking, he says, you must be working on a big project, as I don't see any posts lately.
Yeah, so pretty much like a lot of bloggers, I've moved a little bit away from the actual blog itself. So I do have a tour company that I started back in 2013, Wandering Earl Tours, and that takes up quite a bit of time. This year, had coronavirus not struck, I would have had almost 30 tours. So that does take up quite a bit of my time. And I am also working on a different project that will be released later this year. But yeah, I can't talk about that one yet. But yeah, my business partner and I are working on something quite big to be released soon.
Oh, fantastic. Looking forward to that.
Mhm.
And you've written about how you started a travel agency, and I didn't realize quite how far back it went, that it's what it's been about 7, 8 years now at this point. And
Yeah, the first tour I offered was in 2013, a tour to India. Just a few readers at the same time happened to ask if they could travel with me to India, and just gave me the idea. I was like, you know what, maybe I'll put together a tour for these, for a few people. Maybe a few more want to join, and I'll take them around India the way I know. And I announced it, sold out, and that gave me the idea to move to other countries. And yeah, it went from that one tour in 2013 to yeah, next year, if all goes well, it should have that same 25, 30 tours. And yeah, it's really branched out into something I never would have imagined, you know, that I'd be doing. That's for sure.
I imagine many tourists, extensive travelers, have those moments where like, oh, I could maybe start an agency, and then they start reading about. It's one thing to give people travel advice, and it's another to have an agency with liability and booking
Yeah.
and all of that. So talk about you've stuck with it, so clearly there's something for it. But talk about the challenges and the potential opportunity these days.
For sure. I think one of the biggest things, the advantage that I had is that I had traveled for quite a long time ahead of time. And that allowed me to become very familiar with a lot of countries. And so in the beginning, I only ran tours to countries, not that I'd only been to, but countries that I knew incredibly well. So I knew how they worked. I had the contacts. I knew how to get that important information about permits and rules and whatever you need. So that made it easier. I see a lot of people who are starting off they like the idea of starting the tour company, but I will get emails from people saying, "Oh, I want to do a tour in Italy. I was there once for 2 weeks a couple of years ago, and now I want to offer tours to Italy." And that's very difficult because they were there, sure, once for 2 weeks, but they don't have the context. They don't know how it works. And the main word you said before was liability and legal issues. That's pretty much what turns most people away once they start looking into it. Running the tour, you can always make happen, but once people see how much work is required to actually learn the rules of every single country and to find people that have whether it's guides or transportation that have the proper insurance coverage and protection, and just making sure your guests are fully protected at all times. That's where tricky stuff comes in. I think a lot of people, once they see all that, realize that it's more than just saying, "Hey guys, you want to come to Italy with me?" and then they all fly there and go travel around together. So I personally enjoy it because honestly, I'm taking people to countries that I know very well, and I know the kind of experiences that I can give them. All the tours are based on my personal travels, so we meet a lot of my friends and in places and a lot of local experiences. And yeah, based on the feedback, I just love doing it. And so to me, it's worth it to continue offering these trips, despite the work, obviously, because in my opinion, everything takes hard work. And this just is how my path ended up going. And yeah, I'm more than happy with it.
And your tours have this theme of wandering, and a lot of group tours have the theme of the opposite, high speed bus chases through European medieval
Right.
towns and things. So I guess that relates to how do you communicate the value of, I think you said what, 30, you were going to have 30 tours this year.
Yep.
So it's Wandering Earl, the brand, but it's not Earl or Derek on every trip. So how do you imbue your values
Yeah.
into a trip that's a good
And
experience?
And that's a great question because that was the tricky transition. In the beginning, for the first few years, I did lead all the tours. So that
Mhm.
made it easier. Obviously, when I realized, okay, there's no way that I can lead 10 tours in a year, that's just too
Mhm.
much, I had to think about that. And the idea was to focus away from me and to really get feedback from people who had been on the tours about aspects of the trip that made the tour stand out, and I really pushed that. The other thing is that a lot of the tours are geared towards my audience, so they do know me, or they've known me for quite a long time,
Mhm.
and that helps because they know what kind of traveler I am, and they know what kind of experiences um, I put together over the years. For other groups, I now do a lot of private tours for niche groups. So I work with even an organization that runs tours for women over the age of 55 who are into textiles.
Oh, okay.
So that was a bit trickier, but the way those start is that usually somebody comes on my tour, my regular Wandering Earl tour. They follow my blog, they come on my tour. They're like, wow, I know this other subset of people who would be interested in a niche tour to this particular location. Let's talk about it. And then we talk about it. And so it just sort of takes that one person who understands what the tours are all about to then go help spread the word. And that's sort of how it's grown over the years. Because you're right. Otherwise, it's very difficult to just say, here I am, I'm some random travel blogger. Now I have tours and they're super cool and you should just come and join me. That's very difficult. So you need that sort of deep connection with people in order for it to spread and grow.
And for those less familiar with your tours, the countries you focus on, and then how you're thinking about 2021 potentially, and what you're hearing from customers.
Sure. So I actually still have 3 tours at the end of this year. 3 tours, groups that don't want to cancel at all. Those are all 3 trips to Morocco. So the countries I operate in now are I do Morocco, Tanzania, Egypt, Jordan, Georgia, and Armenia, Romania, Istanbul, quite a lot, India, Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan, Vietnam, Mexico. So I kind of branch out quite a bit. And yeah, I mean, the idea of these trips are pretty much, again, to travel the way that I travel. I will say now, in the beginning, they were all countries that I have a lot of experience in myself. It's now gotten to the point where I actually get requests from people who say, I know you haven't been to this part of the world or you haven't spent much time there, but I'd like you to organize the tour for our group. Just again, because they now know the style of the tour that I will organize. Yeah, another one, actually, Socotra Island I have coming up for next year as well. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of how it's gone. And I think for next year, honestly, I'm starting now to get a lot of inquiries from people. A lot of people are just telling me they can't wait to get out there and they want to go on something different. And luckily, that's how I've positioned my trips. They want to do something different. They want to go to smaller villages. They want to go and meet people. They don't care about the main sites. They just want to get out there and yeah, and see something different. So I see next year being quite good.
Oh, it's fantastic and great to hear. And you certainly got some destinations with a lot of open spaces. I'm thinking Central Asia. Socotra is a favorite. This is the one Facebook group in the world I can guarantee you don't need to sell us on Socotra, but you've been talking about Socotra in your writing since I checked. It was 2013. So speak to how wonderful it is with my biased question.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, that place is it's the most magical place I've been. There is no place like that on the planet, and well worth the effort to get there. And I traveled quite a bit at that point when I got to Socotra, and still that's probably the one destination where I spent more time just honestly standing in complete awe at what I was seeing. It was almost, I don't know if there's another place on the planet where I really felt that I was in an otherworldly location that was something that you don't see anywhere else, and that maybe I will now because I'm going to run the tour, but I would have at that time guessed that I wouldn't see again because it's so remarkable and mind-blowing, to be honest. And I remember standing on one of the beaches and looking up at the white sand dunes that rose all the way up to the edge of the canyon, and it's incredible. It's just incredible. It's things I've never seen before. And then to meet the people and man, it was it's just everywhere we went to be invited into homes and to just sit on the side of the road and chat with people over tea. And I don't know, I really felt like we were so isolated and almost on another planet. And I don't think I've had that feeling of any other destination I've been to, no matter how remote, at any other time in the 20 years I've been traveling.
Yeah, and we're both Americans, and I've often felt that even cultures that seem very different, if it's a very large, populous, economically powerful country, I often feel more immediate affinity in the sense of familiarity, where these very small, remote places really fascinate me. I'm thinking I went to Socotra in 2019, and the agency kept saying in these notes to me, by the way, we do not have any eggs. And I said, I didn't say I need an egg diet. I like them, but I don't
That's
know where
funny.
this is coming from. And then when I got there, I said, what was this thing about the eggs? And they said, well, we love eggs, but we hate chickens. So the chickens are on the mainland, and we haven't had many eggs the past few years. And that was their way
That's
to
funny.
sum up getting cut off by the war and that. And,
That's funny. That's
these kind of moments. Speaking of the mainland, and that's one that I had put off in my travels, and now I've not been, and it's tragic the events
yeah.
happening there. You have seen the mainland, and the way you describe Socotra in a very different sense is what I think of when I look at your pictures of the mainland. So speak to that when it becomes, or and also in the sense of when you think it would be reasonable for you to visit again. What would be the decision making process for you?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I mean, for me, excuse me. Yeah, first it's spectacular as well. You know, to see all these villages carved into the side of mountains or on top of mountains, and it's like one of these Game of Thrones movies come to life, basically.
Mm.
Um, I have a friend who was there recently, actually,
Mm.
end of last year. He has some very good connections, and he goes quite often. He's Australian, but yeah, I get a lot of my advice from him. He's spent a significant amount of time there, and I have connections there now as a result of him. And his advice is definitely they're not close, unfortunately,
Mm.
to be going. It's just because it's unpredictable. The situation is actually calmer, but it's just unpredictable, and to be caught in that, I remember even when I went to the mainland, I remember everybody talking about we got out of one guest house one night in the middle of nowhere, and we woke up, we come outside, and there's two pickup trucks full of soldiers.
Mm.
And they just said, we're here to escort you. I said, okay, why? And they said, when you went through the checkpoint last night, we checked your passports and we saw that one of you is a US citizen. So if there's at least one US citizen in any group, you need to be surrounded by soldiers while you go through certain areas. And the
Mm.
reason is because there's a high kidnapping rate.
Mm.
And for non-US citizens, usually it ends pretty well with a ransom paid, and that's it. And with US citizens, can end up a lot different. So that's why even my friend said that's still the situation. And I did go back then when you had soldiers that could protect you, which I didn't know about that ahead of time, to be honest.
Mm.
But it was a little bit more organized, a lot of checkpoints and things like that. And now those checkpoints are not there. So I think that's going to be a while, to be honest, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Also, a lot of places that I saw are destroyed. I mean, it's heartbreaking. Same when I went to Syria and to see the places that are destroyed, and Yemen to see the places that are destroyed now is absolutely heartbreaking. For me personally, I don't know if I could go back, but yeah, definitely a long way off.
Yeah, we struggle with that in our group because we have a number of people that have been, say, to mainland Yemen in the past year, and I went to Syria last August, and
Yeah.
my approach is that nothing happened doesn't mean it's safe. But
Yeah.
I feel like it's easy to say nothing happens, so it's safe, and I'm always concerned about that messaging coming out. Well, we'll go to an extremely safe place next. You have a post a few years ago that made me raise an eyebrow of Seychelles as an affordable destination. So
Yeah.
tell us how you can afford, because even you just look for the basic accommodations. Those are not what people are thinking of. I mean, it's not Bali options like outside your window here.
No, definitely not Bali options. It's not $20 a night, but you can get $40 a night, which in my opinion, for what you get, is very affordable. So there are guest houses on La Digue Island, which is the most beautiful in most people's accounts, mine included. In the $40 range, you can get a room at a guest house, and you rent a bike for $5 a day. And food, they have these small little local kind of canteens, almost like a little buffet shop. You walk in, the family cooked 10 meals that morning, and you go with your plate, you choose what you want, and it's going to probably cost you about $10. Yes, it's not Bali prices, but at the end of the day, you could survive there on about $60 a day. If you were two people, split the accommodation, so that would be even less, say $40 a day. In my opinion, to see the most beautiful beaches on the planet, or the most beautiful islands, that's quite affordable. Sure, you can do it for $10,000 an hour if you'd like. That option is there too. It definitely has the whole range. But honestly, the thing is, there's not much to do once you're there that costs money.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'm not a consumer or expert of beaches. I go to them when I see them.
Mhm.
But I would say the most beautiful beaches I've ever seen. I would, if I pick one area, it would be Seychelles.
Yeah.
Do you rank them up there, or you?
Number one by far. Number one by far, because I don't think it's very hard to get that combination of beautiful beach, incredible water, and so few people. And to be on one of the most beautiful beaches and to be swimming in the water with all these colorful fish around you with the mountains in the background and nobody else on the beach is pretty difficult to find these days. So to me, overall, the experience is just beyond spectacular.
And for me, it's those the giant rocks on so many of the beaches that give it that framing and give it that setting that it's not just that uninterrupted stretch of white sand.
Yeah, absolutely. No, no, exactly. It's the whole setting, the whole feeling, even on like La Digue to bike over to, I don't know, just that feeling of biking from one end to the other and suddenly locking up your bike and walking down to just paradise. And it's the whole experience is, yeah. So I think, in my opinion, $60 a day. Sure, you got to fly there, so that adds something, but you
Mhm.
can find, at certain times $1,000 round trip from the U.S. Um, and overall, for a Seychelles holiday, I think that's significantly less than what a lot of people imagine for a place like the Seychelles.
Yeah, fantastic. And when you mentioned on tours is a destination that's flummoxed me for years, and that's Tanzania. And I've been around Zanzibar. I've actually
Mhm.
was planning this year for some form of safari tours. I was looking at Gombe Stream National Park, the
Mhm.
chimpanzee in Goodall's Base, and I've got the Brat Guide on the national parks of Tanzania, and I've read through every one of them, and they're all fantastic seeming, and I can't decide. I'm not one that's going to spend $10,000. I'll show up and hop on a day safari, or I'll self drive. I mean, how do you begin to grapple with the costs and the trade offs of all the different parks around the country?
Yeah, so honestly, so I do obviously for the tours, I do a lot of research and I try to I know generally what people expect when they come on my trips. So sure, we're gonna go to the crater in
Mhm.
Tanzania and just see it for a day because it is spectacular. But the main safari stuff is actually going to be at very small parks, and that's the idea. Um, is to do something different because I guess people come on my trips. I know what they want, obviously, and they know what I like to offer. And the idea is that, yes, we'll see a little glimpse of some of the main stuff if it's really that impressive. And then other than that, a lot of the times when we arrive in a destination and on day one, I'll say, does anyone know where we're going? It's quite common for people to say, I have no idea. Like they don't know the name of the towns. They don't know the name of the national parks, the game
Mhm.
reserves. They don't know because that's not the important thing. They just know that
Mhm.
they're going to do some cool activities in places that obviously I know are going to be quite spectacular. Um, so I think that's it. I mean, at the same time, I have run a trip to Kenya as well, to the Masai Mara, which I still think is one of the best places for safari, in my
Mhm.
opinion, especially if you go on a shoulder season. Because man, I've gone there and had literally 3 days, seen one other jeep of tourists in the
Wow.
whole park, and that's to me that's one of the biggest parks that you can go to and have that kind of experience, which is amazing. Yeah.
I think that's going to be more the trend of people, avoiding the crowds or hoping they avoid the crowds. And
Yeah.
if they all avoid it at the same time, then then they're all.
But luckily, when you get away from some of the main places, then at least there's a lot of those sort of lesser known places. So a lot more of them that hopefully people will spread out and yeah, won't be too crowded.
And I've actually found on my safari experiences, it's the little busy animals that I enjoy the most because
Mhm.
I'll see the big stuff and those are
Yeah.
impressive, but I could spend hours watching warthogs
I
or
was just gonna
meerkats.
say warthogs. I was just gonna say, show me a whole line of a family of warthogs, and I'll watch them run around like, yeah. Oh man, I'll watch that all day. That's funny.
Whereas it's the poor zebras, I think, that get get the bad rap. It's like, oh, not another zebra.
They get the first initial. They get the good first initial, like, oh my god, a zebra, and then very quickly goes downhill for them.
But well, I got a bit of a reaction out of you. But I remember another one of your posts because I get not necessarily complimented in this way about life without reaction. So I've tried to be more outgoing in my travels and more engaging with people. You wrote some years ago about blending in and melting into the background. So speak about that approach.
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, that's more of just a safety mechanism. So I think a lot of it, it's just a way for me to adapt to going to so many places where there's not a lot of tourists, for example, or people aren't used to foreigners. And it's just kind of a way for me to adjust more quickly to an unfamiliar place. And I think a lot of that is just kind of taking in my surroundings and seeing the few similarities between that do exist no matter where you are, and kind of understanding how life works there a little bit more quickly than just kind of plopping down in the middle of a random city and pull out the guidebook and kind of look around, figure it out from the beginning. I guess just I feel with my travel experience, I can already feel comfortable in places that I haven't been to an extent. And so I do try to lean on that a little bit as a way to adjust, and also to go a little bit deeper. It's helped me meet some incredible people and interact with the communities, because I try really hard to not appear as I'm just somebody there to take photos. I do want to meet people, whether it's anybody just on the street, and have a conversation. And I feel like trying from the beginning to be familiar and to be adjusted to the location using my past experience helps me immediately connect with people wherever I go, because they see that I'm not just walking around trying to take photos, that I'm adjusted and I feel comfortable there. And then they feel comfortable to approach me, and we I can have some really cool conversations that way.
My wife says I still have naive American eyes in her phrase. So when people approach me, she says it's because of that. Another lesson you've taught me, but I remember any time where I've really lost my temper and I regret it. And so when you talked about the uselessness of getting upset, I try to keep that with me. Speak to that concept.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's also from experience of having so many things happen that if I got upset, they would have all probably ended in much worse situations than what happened. And eventually it just clicked. If I don't get upset at some of these moments and just a little bit frustrated, or that's fine, and just realize that this is the journey that I chose, and this is all part of the journey. Like, things are going to happen, and just kind of accept them and sort of let them bounce off. That'll make a big difference in not only my travels and how I feel about a destination, but also, just in life in general. And I do try to take that little bit calmer approach. Because I do feel that, I guess, with this lifestyle, especially even now with the tours, things go wrong. Stuff happens all the time. Like, that's just the nature of travel. And if you kind of get upset at all the things, all the little things, even the medium size and even some of the big stuff, it's just going to pile up. And that's going to make it very difficult to continue enjoying travels, and to let that kind of frustration grow is not something that I personally want to do. So I do really try to recognize every situation, and if it's possible to just let it go, then, we all get ripped off. We all get hit by a motorcycle taxi. I don't know, whatever happens, charged by a rhino. I don't know, whatever it is.
I haven't been
from Bangladesh. So whatever, no, stuff happens, obviously. And I guess I just realized that I do want to just not let that get to me too much, because this is what I chose in the end. And I feel much better, obviously, without getting upset all the time.
Yeah, I feel like that's when I look worst as an American, is if I lose my temper, because that's just going to confirm so many stereotypes right there that I'm trying to not perpetuate.
Yeah, fair enough.
Well, we were interrupted in the setup by your rescue kitten. Andrew was asking, Derek, how's Bali life and your new rescue kitten?
Well, the kitten is doing wonderfully. Yes, going tomorrow for the next set of vaccinations. So she's growing and very healthy. So thanks for asking. Very cool. Bali life is honestly, not much has changed there, apart the fact that there's not many foreigners. So most things are open that want to be open, and except for the beach. Beach is still closed. But apart from that, it's we're just kind of in a routine here because, it's just a beautiful place to be, getting work done, going for walks through town, eating some healthy food that's here and enjoying nature pretty much, which is about all there is at the moment here in Bali. And yeah, it's been nice. But I am trying to get back to the US with the kitten.
Mhm.
But that looks like, I don't know when, honestly, end of July, maybe, as nobody's really going to fly here until tourists are allowed to come back, because obviously, so there's no plans at the moment for tourists to come back. So that means no flights. So we'll see. But hopefully, by end of July, head back to the US just to visit family and hopefully find this kitten a good home.
Fantastic. And that leads into Scott sent a question in absentia about that you're the best person I could talk to about the modern digital nomad movement, as he asked. And I'm curious about time zones and bases. So when I lived in Asia, I actually got used to the time zone and enjoyed
Mhm.
the my daytime. I was dealing a lot with
Yeah.
U.S. Yeah, I could get things done. I found being based in Seattle, where I am now, actually more of a problem time zone. I hate getting up early, and I had to be up at 6 this morning for a call with London. So,
Yep.
talk about the different bases, and you've even claimed people can be productive anywhere. So, how
Yeah,
can
for
people
sure.
be productive anywhere?
Well, I think it's just adjusting. First of all, you have to adjust. I mean, I think part of this you have to realize with the digital nomad lifestyle, it's not going to be, that's the whole idea. It's not going to be the traditional 9 to 5. So
Mhm.
it's not going to be, everything's not going to fall into place perfectly. That you go, you get your work done now, and during these hours, then you go have lunch, then you continue working, and then the day ends. I think that's part of it. In order to enjoy the lifestyle, there's definitely adjustments that need to be made, and one of those is, especially with time zones, it's just a trade-off. If you want to come to Southeast Asia and you need to be online at night here, well, that's part of it. But it's, you're in Southeast Asia and you get to enjoy all of wherever the destination that you're in during the day. So you just make adjustments, and I think if that particular adjustment doesn't work out for you, and you realize, okay, working late at night until 3 in the morning doesn't quite suit me.
Mhm.
Okay, well, the good news is there's obviously destinations everywhere, all over the world in different time zones that might suit you. So I think it's just kind of experimenting and trying to find the right place. I think my girlfriend, for example, it's very hard for her to be in Asia with her work,
Mhm.
but she loves Asia, so she'll come here for, say, okay, this is a little bit different situation with COVID, but usually would come for a couple months maximum, knowing that she would then head back to, say, Europe,
Mhm.
or somewhere else that would be closer to European time zones, in order just to be a little bit easier. And then she'll branch out again to maybe North America, South America, or something. So I think that's just an important thing. With the bases, it's interesting. I think with bases these days, the key is to figure out what you're looking for. If it's community, you really just want to have a good community of people, and that's the most important thing. Then you have to look at a place like Bali or Lisbon or Berlin, or one of these top places that everybody's going to, in order to just have that. Otherwise, it can be very tricky if you choose a place that doesn't have what you actually need. So my personal advice is to find a place that matches what you need to be happy while you're out there, as opposed to a place that necessarily has the attractions that you want to visit, because it's very difficult to stay in a base if you're not comfortable there, and if it doesn't have even the food you like, the atmosphere, the vibe, the kind of people that you like to hang around with, the activities, nature. If you like a lot of nature, and then you're in a big city where it's hard to get to nature, that's going to be very difficult. So um, I kind of move my bases kind of as I feel, whatever I need. If I recently was in Spain for a while, because that actually was just an ideal place for me to be. I love the Spanish culture, laid back. I was in Valencia, love the food, the people. It was wonderful. Will I stay forever? Probably not. So once I realize I don't know something else that I want or need, then I'll move on and find a base that matches that. So it's just making adjustments, constantly being aware of what you need personally. And I think that's how it works. Otherwise, I see a lot of people get to places and it doesn't work out well. They get frustrated, and it's because they just went to the place that they thought they should go, as
Mhm.
opposed to a place that suits them best. And I think that's the key. You can definitely be productive from anywhere. I think the main aspect with that is realizing what your work leads to. So if you can and start working as a digital nomad in some field, and you see the benefits, you earn money, it allows you to travel, it allows you to meet amazing people, do really cool things. That's, to me, what motivates me to be productive wherever I am. Because if I'm
Mhm.
not productive, then the lifestyle falls apart. Simple as that. then I don't have this lifestyle. So I use that as my motivation to be productive regardless of where I am, what time zone it is, what base I'm in, because I need to be so that I can still enjoy the things that I enjoy from this lifestyle.
And I've shared in the comments your guide on how to live a life of travel.
Cool. Thank you.
To consider that, and I'm curious. I've heard say from people in Thailand that they felt that the response the past few months has been pretty positive in terms of just saying flat out, okay, visas are extended until this date, and we'll figure it out. So don't crowd at an immigration office. What about the different bases have you learned in the past 2-3 months that has either enhanced their appeal to you as a recommendation or detracted from it?
You mean overall for in general?
Yeah, I mean, so I would think a lot of people are concerned now that in a case, a sudden negative event like this, some countries are, the reactions are all over the map. So of these popular bases you mentioned, which have, it's a precarious lifestyle, the digital nomad,
sure.
You're not a citizen. So which have treated digital nomads well?
So I mean, honestly, here, like in Indonesia, they gave free visa extensions. I don't know if that's what you meant before when you said Thailand, but in Indonesia, here they free visa extensions. That was easy. So this is definitely, and I definitely can't complain. I would say Bali is an excellent place to be in such a situation. Another one would be Portugal. The most talked about place that I've seen already. It was popular enough, Lisbon, but now Lisbon and Porto. That's the most talked about one that I've seen now about people wanting to kind of flock to once this is over and being okay with being there. Also Berlin, because they kept it pretty chill during this time, and those countries you were able to extend as well. But honestly, it's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to think of some other ones. Vietnam also. I heard excellent things, like friends that I had that didn't leave Vietnam that actually lived there, and it was handled in a wonderful way. The communication was excellent. Visas were extended, and that was actually handled pretty decently. The thing with digital nomads, to be honest, there's far fewer than we think, and I think that's the thing. So most countries didn't even pay attention or didn't even notice. There's a reason why there's only 4 or 5 digital nomad hubs in the world, because there's not that many digital nomads at the end of the day. And so I think, most of the countries that have large populations of them did handle it pretty well. You actually mentioned Thailand before, but again, I'm not sure if you meant Indonesia, but Thailand actually did not handle it well, forcing people to line up at the immigration offices at 5 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, our guest had talked about how initially it was not handled well in that sense, and then it was like after a week or so, then they just realized it, and at least they pivoted.
Even longer. I had friends that after the lockdown, 3 weeks later, was still required to get a letter from their embassy and wait in line at 5 a.m. at the immigration and pay a significant amount of money to get the extension. Where here in Indonesia, they just put out notices. No money, doesn't matter how long. We'll keep you updated. Don't come to the immigration office. Don't do anything. It's interesting too, though. I'd be curious to see the backlash. Like Thailand's having a backlash. I just saw a poll that came out in Thailand where it was something like 60% of people said they don't want tourists back this year. A lot of that is the negativity that tourists here. Also, you see people. Most of the negative articles about the reason why cases are starting to rise again is because the tourists are not wearing masks and are the ones breaking through the barriers and going to the beach, even though it's illegal. And I did go to check it out the other day. We just went to the gate, and on the beach, of course, it was 100 foreigners, no locals. And now cases are rising a little bit on Bali. So, I mean, I could see a little bit of a negative backlash in a place like this where the digital nomads or tourists stand out a little bit more.
Well, there's digital nomad movement, I would say, and then there's also these sites about sovereignty and getting second citizenships and these things. Have the recent events? I don't know if you've looked at getting additional citizenship or more formal residency, but have recent events prompted you to research or think about some of that as an extension to your lifestyle?
For me, no. Honestly, I understand why some people look into it. To me, it's not worth the hassle. Honestly, preferably, I wouldn't mind having a permanent residency in Europe, which is why I have the residency in Spain right now, temporary right now, which can be extended till permanent. But apart from that, no, I don't see. It's not worth it for me. I mean, I'm quite happy with my setup. Things work. Yeah, I don't, yeah, I haven't. I mean, I've looked into it over the years, but it hasn't changed my mind in terms of going after it.
Excellent. And many people, young people, graduation this time, they had maybe planned these gap years. And I'm thinking of when you earlier wrote a quick chat with my younger self. So we'll have a quick chat with the person who was planning the gap year and wandering around the world that's interrupted potentially for a year or more. What would you advise them to think about pivoting, making use of this time, and how to defer the plans, but not permanently defer them with corporate golden handcuffs?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the big things is figure out really why you want to go on the gap year. I can say that's my biggest. It's not a mistake because I'm quite happy with how things turned out. But one thing that I didn't really do when I started traveling, I had no idea why I was traveling in the beginning. I met cool people and I saw cool places. I was like, this is awesome. That was pretty much the extent of how I got started. So I think this gives people a good chance to actually understand why they want to get out there and travel, and also to then take steps towards that. So if this, say you want to be a digital nomad eventually, that's curious. Start learning a skill now that will lead towards that. Say you know, there's something that you want to learn about, start learning about it now. Even if obviously we all need to work. So if you need to get a job in something that matches what your end goal is for, you know, your travel experience that you're hoping to have. Because I think you'll get more out of it more quickly if you actually have that purpose in the beginning, and sort of have a clearer focus on why you actually want to get out there in the first place. Guaranteed it's going to change over time because that's the beauty of it all. But I still wish that I had that foundation and was like, I am going to these countries because I want to gain this and this, and I'm going to work every day towards this. It took me some time until I actually figured that out. Whether it's learn about history or even just meet amazing people, this is something that you can focus on when you wake up each day. And whatever that is, find a job now or learn some skill or take some classes or anything. Even start to travel locally if you can. You know, in the US, you can always find, I mean, there's plenty of rewards in doing that, of course, and just do something that matches that idea that you have of what you want to gain from travel.
The only person I've heard you say it's okay to be a non-digital nomad. There's so many people selling digital nomads. So,
Yeah.
what's the non-digital nomad? Is that doing a job that he actually uses hands for something other than a laptop?
Yeah, that's the thing. The problem is, I guess my problem with it is that digital nomad is not a job, and a lot of people sell it as a job. It's not a job. It's the same as saying I'm an office worker. That's as descriptive as it is. So I guess that's the thing, right? Like a lot of my friends who are enjoying this lifestyle, who are way more successful than any digital nomad I met, actually have jobs. They're remote workers. They have jobs from actual companies. You know, and maybe they don't travel full time. Some of them do. Some of them travel 6 months a year and then live in Chicago for the rest, and they go into the office. That's fine. I guess the idea is with digital nomad, it just has this concept attached to it that you need to create some job yourself, and that you need to create your own business, and you need to be a life coach, and you need to do all this stuff that's out there, which that's not kind of how it works. You should use your skills to do something that actually matches it. And for most people, it's nothing wrong finding a job with a company that allows you to work remotely. I mean, trust me, it would have saved me a heck of a lot of, you know, struggle had I matched up with a company in my early days that allowed me to work remotely and get a steady paycheck. So I guess that's just my thing. Or if that doesn't have to be, you know, it either. There's nothing wrong with going to China teaching English. Do that for a year. Actually, have a reader here in Bali that I was communicating with, and she lived in China for 2 years. She lived in Taiwan. She lived in Bali now for a couple of years. She just floats around every couple of years teaching English, and she loves it. And she gets deep into the culture. She takes side trips to different countries. So what's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong with that. She's not a digital nomad, but she loves the lifestyle. So my only point with that is that you can actually find many more opportunities out there than just that. Grab your laptop, start doing ads, like you said, or create an ebook or a course or coaching, whatever. That's very difficult. There's millions of people trying to do it who don't have the actual experience of how it works. So I think for a lot of people, it would be a much easier road if to look at non-digital nomad style options, and that still allow you to live this lifestyle.
Question about Tbilisi, Georgia as a hub. If I were there, I would not last long in terms of my cardiac health because the food I did love. But as a if you're disciplined, speak to it as a base.
Yeah, I would say this. That's funny. I have a friend who's got stuck there now during all this, and he said the same thing. He would live there in 2 seconds if it wasn't for the air. And that's the same. For me, that's the same. It's a great city, amazing place, but I struggle with polluted places, to be honest. And they have a lot of pollution from the old cars there, so that's the difficult part for me. But obviously, apart from that, if you can handle it's it's an incredible place. It's just I think that's going to continue to become one of the big hotspots over the next couple of years.
And this may not be the most popular choice at this point, but you spend a lot of time working on board cruise ships. So what does your crystal ball say about that as an opportunity?
Honestly, it's going to come back. So I still have friends that are still in the industry, and I have no doubt with the American market, it's going to come back next year and be as strong as it was, just because it was growing at such a pace that it just shows the interest. The thing is, there's going to be a lot of need for crew members. So for people who are looking for interesting jobs, I'm going to get, from what I hear, the end of this year, around September, because what happened is most of the cruise lines sent all their crew members home, right? And what happens when you send most of your crew members home is that they take other jobs because they need, obviously, to work. A lot of those crew members are not going to be coming back, and they have lots of ships to fill. So there is going to be a huge push for hiring more crew members towards the end of this year, around fall time. So for those who are looking for an interesting opportunity, I always say I worked on cruise ships for about 4.5 years total, and I only left because it was too good. Granted, that was because I had a pretty good position, but there's nothing wrong if you work hard and have a little bit of a brain, you can get into one of the good positions as well. It's not that difficult, especially with so many ships out there, and you can really save a lot of money, meet people from all over the world, make valuable networking connections, and also see a little taste of the world as well.
If you're considering job options, how much does it make a difference which cruise line you're applying to?
So the main thing in terms of pay is going to be, so they all pretty much offer the same jobs. What happened before all this is that some of the cruise lines went towards a 80 to 90%, say, Filipino or Indonesian crew base to save money. So I think that's like Holland America, for example, had gotten to about 80% with that. So I would say you would want to go to the ships that don't have that high of a base from, say, Philippines or Indonesia, because there's just higher pay for most positions. I worked for Cunard, which has the Queen Mary II, Queen Victoria, these beautiful ships out of the UK. That was my favorite of all the cruise lines I worked for, and very high pay. And they offer a sort of a level of service that they need to pay well, or else it's not going to match what the customers expect. So, I mean, those high-end cruise lines tend to pay a little bit more, but overall, that's the general rule.
Different cruises and cruise lines, and I'm no expert, but have reputations of you're going to be all with Americans or all with Germans or smoking Italians. So if you're looking for a vibrant or authentic cultural experience, which nationality should we consider being on cruises with, and which should we run the other direction?
I mean, honestly, most cruise lines will have a mix overall, to be honest. I mean, honestly, like Norwegian Cruise Lines, NCL, they have quite a diverse crew members and quite a diverse clientele as well. If you want a different experience, MSC Cruise Lines and Costa Cruises out of Europe, those are two European-based cruise lines, so they tend to have more of a European crew members and guests, so that tends to be a little more international. But I will say, for something pretty unique for Americans, would be the Norwegian Cruise Lines has one ship out in Hawaii, and it's a 100% U.S.-based crew. It operates under U.S. labor laws, the only ship to do that. Pay is very high compared to other cruise lines. You get vacation pay, you get health insurance. you get to go around Hawaii all the time. The one downside is 100% American crew, American territory. So you do have people from Guam and American Samoa and things like that. That's the diversity. But yeah, it's a interesting way to do it. You definitely get higher pay though.
Fantastic. And if we're talking, well, actually, I forgot that. Scott said I have to ask you about customer service stories. So can you share us a customer service anecdote?
Oh boy, let's see. I've had people come. I had one guy, so I was the tour manager, so we ran all the excursions. I had one guy where we were in the island of St. Martin, and because of heavy winds, he was on a sailboat tour that was going to a beach. They couldn't go to the beach as advertised because it was too windy, so they went to an alternate beach, beautiful white sand beach. Guy came back, started screaming at me at the desk that he wanted his money back because he's a lawyer from New York City, and they didn't go to the beach that was supposed to go. I said, "I'm sorry, we went to an alternate beach for safety reasons. It's in the guidelines. It's all right here." He backed away, took 10 steps back into the lobby with a drink in hand, ran towards my desk and jumped, like dove over the desk to try and tackle me. It was awesome. And luckily my colleague there, we kind of held him down, called security. And yeah, that stuff like this honestly happens all the time. I had one guy in, what was that, St. Kitts. He came back and he demanded to speak with me. So I went out of my office and he put his finger in my face, was like, "I want you to give me." This was a profanity laced. He wanted all the money back for his beach excursion because there was a dead goat 100 yards behind the beach. And this guy was screaming and swearing, and he went up, and I was just like, "I'm sorry, but we don't control the goats." And honestly, I mean, it goes on and on. I've been yelled at so much to the point where it actually was very helpful, to be honest, as a person, because you take it very personally in the beginning, and we also knew by nationality what to expect, right? So we knew Americans would scream and scream, and then they would be your friends after, no problem. We knew the Germans would scream and scream, and then they won't talk to you. We knew the British would write big letters. I would get like 10-page handwritten letters complaining about, the catamaran's condition. Australians and like Canadians would like apologize, and it's pretty stereotypical stuff, but it was pretty funny, and we kind of knew what to expect. But it was all good and stuff. I mean, honestly, the overwhelming majority of people are super nice, and that was actually one of my favorite parts, was meeting the guests, because I got to meet so many people, from Prince of Bahrain all the way to just cool people living in communes in Wisconsin. I mean, just the whole gamut, and it was pretty amazing.
Wow, money doesn't necessarily buy class, but it does.
Yeah,
get some interesting people on board.
Exactly.
I guess that's the answer we have to your, is it really possible to live life to the fullest? So if somebody is so motivated to leap over a desk and tackle you.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry, can I be like the weirdest guest ever?
You've got to go. I heard that doorbell. I think that's
the blood nurse is here, and my girlfriend's sleeping from dengue fever, and the nurse is here to take her next blood count, but she's here early.
Well, thank you for joining us this evening.
I apologize.
Be well.
Thank you, my friend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.